It's the 19th of February 2019. It's a really tough way to journalize things, but I think I'm getting better at it. Podcasting is not that easy. It's not for everyone. But I have found a method to cope, and I think at the end of the day, it's a future where progressive individuals are probably more self-aware and they're using technology for a multiple effect. The show Mind Drives Performance is really important to me. I'm writing a book. There's also a spin-off from the book called The Sognia. But Mind Drives Performance is actually the name of a company that I tried to start amidst all my side hustles. And I'm really just trying to compress experience and parallel universe that has occupied my life since the 2000s. So ending of 1999, pretty much to 2019, is a compression of what I'd like to do in the Mind Drives Performance book. The title really has nothing to do with the parallel universes, but in essence, the core is the moral fiber that gets expressed. It's just the actual persistence and enthusiasm in tackling all sorts of challenges and how I've overcome them, and obviously how I've coped with them. But there has to be a silver lining to all these choices. But I think at the end of the day, the sad reality is that in a limited economic environment, one has to be really always very overly optimistic, and that's not easy. And the book really just, it centers around a third world environment where a number of individuals, have to develop a really thick skin in the success of companies. I know it's cutthroat even in developed markets, but as much as monopolies thrive in developed markets, there's even more of a corruption in third world. So there's so much that to unpack there just from an macroeconomic outlook, and that's something that has come late in my lifetime. I grew up from a very rural type of background where you have a very intense relationship with nature, but once again, the agro economy of things is not the same as normal enterprise. You have small family businesses that are generating income off the land, and you would actually look at what is the mode of that farm or that mode of that business, and you would see that the income is somewhat of a recipe that exists within a family. I think I've really struggled to understand why there was no route for formal employment in my whole journey. I think the reasons are very clear. It was never meant to be. It was never meant to be a defined path. That's the answer. And I've had to almost take the different experiences that I've picked up along the way, and maybe like an academia point of view, but then also from small business and entrepreneurial point of views as well. But never really felt that I've managed to get a ticket to a world that I'm unable to exit from. I think I've always been looked after in that regard. But the thing that I'm trying to understand is, you're on this world for a limited amount of time. You should be doing activities that you are passionate about, and you then are striving for excellence in that category. And if that business does not succeed, does that make you a bad person? We are sold a pretty much a dream. I think from a fundamentally, from a child fundamental age. I mean, my story was I grew up in the 80s, and there was no formal education. But let's just say there was a spill off of. There was a formula for success that was spilling over into my education, and there wouldn't be any regrets with the education that was received. But the premise that was sold was that the silent generation, the baby boomer generation, have now created this void that needs to be filled, and the ideology was that you must enter the workplace with minimum a degree, and hence the limitations and the actual availability for people to enroll at university is very limited. So I grew up at a time where it was very much definitely white privilege in the rural and in the city environment. By the time I arrived at high school, equality and a whole bunch of transformation was taking place politically in the country that I was raised. The uncertainty around safety and the actual, let's just call it the rights of minorities, that was going to be definitely an uncertainty. And I think at the end of the day, the best thing that could have happened for our country was we had a leader that was very sound in his moral beliefs, and we really did feel that if we worked together from wherever you came from, whether you were rich or poor or just previously disadvantaged, we were going to reach a point where together we are way more stronger than on our own. And that was around 94, 95. And I am still starting high school at that time. And I am very fixed on the fact that if I just keep on aiming for a particular qualification and arrive at achieving a degree, then I should not have a problem with employment. So that was the dream that was sold, and the premise did not materialize because as limited economic opportunities became the same, because I'm pretty sure as a state and private enterprises around the country that are supported in some regards, we're probably able to cater for a set number of formal employment, but that number did not increase. So if you look at the whole system, if you were someone that was on the fringes or someone that wasn't possibly going to be a professional in some form of the qualification, then you were going to have to be entrepreneurial the way you fitted in with society. And given that almost 35 to 40% of the economy comes from private entrepreneurial equity, it says a lot for what this country provides as opportunities for possible zero to hero stories of how companies found a really good time to offer goods and services, and sometimes professional services, and you would build small to medium enterprises that would actually serve you very well from an individual mandate, and not always state-owned enterprise, but more from a family or maybe from an individual personal financial. And I don't really feel that that's improved since the early 80s, because if you had your formal qualification wrapped up in the 80s and you have now your health professional license or you're in the legal or financial or engineering field, and maybe you are going to be someone that will contract out, which is very highly recommended. Fantastic. You have this unbelievable amount of opportunities, or let's call it expansion, which hit the country as soon as we knew that we needed to have certain infrastructure in place by 2010. It almost felt like another gold rush, just from construction and a whole bunch of new technologies that were going to be entered into the fiscus. But the sad part is I feel I was just never prepared for the change, or I just unfortunately was ignorant of the fact that the skill that I had was irreplaceable or could be replaced by technology. So the best thing that I got out of my tertiary education and postgraduate education was the ability to critically think, problem-based learning, and I think that's something that I have not completely capitalized on, but it is the start of when in 2009, being unemployed and freelancing in many different sectors. I was in the financial sector and also the sports and leisure industry. And I thought that this would obviously be my mandate, would be to build a career that was very informal, but have a client or network that would actually buy into a certain ideology, and that would be that your financial wellness as well as your health wellness has got to all, be a correlation to your mental health. And as hard as that is to disseminate, I come from a performance background where we would measure certain cognitive performance under different types of stress. And you would find that athletes that were very good with endurance or gifted with innate abilities, they had this unbelievable attitude to training, learning how to compete, and then obviously learning how to win. But at the end of the day, you have someone who becomes a subject of study, and you can understand what makes a person a winner or a craftsman in their field. But really, you're not really doing it for yourself. You're really a sugnia, which is a supplementary person to someone else's journey. And if they succeed, then you would succeed. But we know you can't actually put all your eggs in one basket. So you can't be that person that's the strength and conditioning coach for one tennis player. You would end up, unfortunately, only getting a payout if that person's successful. And given that coming from South Africa, geographically, very few sportsmen actually really beat the market or compete internationally and have the funds to do so with the depreciating currency that our unfortunate, the dream and the premise of 1994 and 1995, there's been no real increase in the number of positions for employment. What's happened is there's just been a zero-sum game going on, and you would find that the youth are very disenfranchised as they struggle to seek employment, and they have no idea how employment would work because they have still not implemented the scheme that gets sold for an agenda or a propaganda for political purposes. And we have unfortunate youth that are, not really interested in upskilling or trying to change the demographic of the economy, but fall victim to obviously the complacency and the strain on the fiscus instead. And that needs to change. That's maybe where my ideology is a little bit too narrow in terms of who I'm actually targeting, because I'm saying if you are earning